We're going to hang for another live stream here at 424 Recording. If you're watching the replay, we go live every Tuesday and Wednesday at 8 p.m. Eastern. So we'd love to have you. Just make sure you enable notifications on the channel. Click the little bell next to subscribe. And if you're watching the replay, you can always watch it like 2x so that you can speed through it a little bit. But I'm going to play a couple songs that have been going on this week around here, and just some stuff we've been working on, and we'll be out in a minute. Jay's gonna be here. We're just taking a quick breather, so we'll be live in a second. So enjoy the tunage. Bro.
There we go.
Oh yeah, it's not here either.
Reload it.
Oh, sweet. Oh, there it is. Yeah. We'll pop out the chat.
Oh, word, yeah. Having it on the big screen would be nice again.
Yeah.
Doing it on here kind of sucks.
What's that?
Doing it on this phone kind of sucks.
Yeah. Well, at least this will be way easier to read.
Spin it around if you want.
Yeah. All right. Should we begin? What up, TascFam?
Yo.
That's a song my buddy Sean was working on, who did the theme song for the channel down low. He's been trying some new avenues for his songwriting, and been trying to do a little dry vocals, which is always pretty cool.
Yeah. That's something I'm still not comfortable with.
Yeah, me either. That's why it's cool to see him trying to do that, because he always doubles his vocal and then reverbs the shit out of it so that you can't hear him.
Got the blend.
Yeah. Oh, that must still be playing. So yeah, we're just here. Coffee with Mike, number 3. Jay the Wizard.
Organic Guatemalan.
Organic Guatemalan, killing it.
French press.
Yeah. Oh man, that's so good. It's like so strong. I made a really weak batch and then we doubled it. So we're gonna be
Drinking high test.
high test.
It's gonna be a long night.
Hell yeah.
So what's good, Task family?
Yeah, what's going on?
Oh snap.
Yo, John, what's going on? I was working on the track today, my friend, so I should have that tomorrow, I think. John sent me a track to mix. So
Nice one.
I'm gonna,
Alright.
yeah, I'm excited, man. That song's been stuck in my head all day. It's really fun. But I'm not quite done with the mix yet, so.
Are you close to 80%?
Yeah. I'm definitely 80% there. But
Okay. All right.
hello, hey Evan, how are you tonight? Thanks for coming out.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I don't know what's been going on in our universe, Jay. Since last
so
week
much.
we had so
So
much
much.
going on.
Well, last week was a obnoxious mess of cables and sounds, and
This
hopefully
little guy.
everybody enjoyed that. But take your time, Big Mike. Oh yeah. But yeah, so we got
messing with this.
we had the TascFam Preamp Proto up in my spot.
Yeah.
And as per our agreement, we're doing every other, so we're back at Mike's pad tonight, and you know, we're gonna talk some more about this preamp, hopefully.
What up, twin?
Maybe field some more questions, since there seems to be a lot of
yeah,
lot bubbling on the first video that Mike did with the guitar.
Yeah, with the guitar. I think we're gonna try to do one video a week up until the Kickstarter, whenever we're ready to do that. So.
Word. Nice.
Because we got to do the drums over at the studio, over at the Bohemesphere.
Yeah. Yeah.
We got to do. Well, we're gonna do like a crush mic, I guess, and then also just any kind of drum mic. So
I actually think what we should do is maybe put a track together. Maybe we could, what with the stream live, we could do a sort of a crow's nest view from inside the control room, and maybe we go in and jam on Little Wiser into the into a mix, and we'll just put up like a dick mic on the drum kit with something real obvious, like a 58 copy or something, and just smash it through that thing.
Yeah,
so everybody
cool.
can hear what a mono drum single mic would be like in a mix with that.
Yeah.
And you can watch us do it live, because that's sort of what we're here for anyhow.
Right.
And then you can ask us questions while I hyperventilate from beating on drums and things.
And also, oh yeah, I just wanted to say, usually since we did the new channel, the new trailer, I've been thinking like Wizard Wednesdays, but because this week is now Valentine's Day.
Valentine's Day this week. Last week was the Blizzard.
Yeah,
so we're 2 Tuesdays in a row since we coined the Wizard Wednesday.
Yeah, we still haven't had an actual Wizard Wednesday.
So next week we'll be back on Wednesdays, 8 p.m. unless, I don't know, like maybe a piece of the Arctic shelf lands in New York and I can't get here, so we have to do it Tuesday instead. But
yeah,
I think it's supposed to be like 40 degrees or something for the next 10 days.
Yeah, it seems like it's gonna be wet, rainy, and like warm, so that's good.
The English among you will understand the disdain that we have for the rainy weather here, especially this time of year. It just turns everything soggy and gray, and then it gets foggy and miserable. What better weather to record in, though? Yeah,
this is the best time of year to record. That's what you said to me the other day. I was surprised I didn't even like make the connection. You're like, everybody's inside at home.
Yeah.
Like everybody's looking to do stuff. Because I thought this would be the slow season for recording. Mike and Jay are sitting in a tree. RECORDING. There's a couple.
Nice one.
Might be a couple extra letters.
But yeah, no, this is the time of year that most bands that are sort of in the game and that are touring bands want to make
put sounds,
records. They want to put stuff down because there's no shows to play, and playing shows in the winter sucks anyway.
Yeah, driving around touring in the winter, no fun.
Well, the ones that do tour in the winter tour the South.
Right.
Florida to California,
the
I-10 corridor, and yeah, that's the best way to do it. But I posted my track to SoundCloud. Nice. So it looks like the
cassette chain.
The cassette chain is popping off. That's cool.
Matt said he uploaded some photos to the forum, so we should check that out.
Nice.
What else we got? Brandon, you guys are awesome. Totally off topic, but I've been buying somewhat broken 4-tracks and trying to fix them up. It would be sweet if you guys maybe went through some common problems and how to fix.
Well, Brandon, I'll tell you what, like 4-tracks or any piece of equipment, the most common problem in electronics is broken solder joints. So learning how to identify those culprits is one of the best things you can do as a troubleshooter. When you troubleshoot, you can either do it at the board level or at the component level. Board level is like when you send it back to a major manufacturer and they go, the input board is bad. They throw that away and put a new one in. Component level is when you're replacing resistors and caps and things on that board instead of fully replacing it. But
we're looking at some of the pics here, Matt, and the tape.
Nice,
dude. We gotta get these in landscape. This is cool though.
So what I would do is if you have a piece of equipment that it works really good until you shake it, or you gotta whack it to make it work good or whatever, that's always a loose connection, and usually that has something to do with solder joints. So if you can sort of learn to identify those, that would be a good thing.
And then I guess belts too, right? Belts are always getting worn out on some of the old stuff.
Yeah, the belts dry rot with age. I mean, rubber dries out.
I've never had issues with mine, so.
Yeah, I mean, somebody was hitting me up today about fixing a 4-track and said something about one of the motors wasn't working, but also there was a comment about you know, a loose belt on the flywheel inside the machine. Like, your belt should never be loose. That's not a thing. So if you have a belt that's stretched out, you need to replace that belt. What we will do eventually, I think, is do a hardware store run and show you different options when you can't find a belt that fits your machine. You can buy generic, you know, giant O-rings and things to make new belts, because there's a lot of machines that you won't find the right belt for.
Yeah, that's what Brandon said. He said, everyone I've bought has had a broken belt. I've been using rubber bands temporarily.
Yeah, you know, I used to do things like that with the rubber bands, but you don't get the same tension out of a rubber band. They tend to be too flexible, or they're too fat, so they don't allow the right clearances. If you go to the hardware store, we have one by me that has drawers and drawers of neoprene or rubber O-rings.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And they come in all different thicknesses and all different diameters. That's the way to do it, unless you can buy the belt straight. You know, if it's a TascFam part or whatever, then that's great. But a lot of times that rubber O-ring thing will work just as well, and you'll get the right tension out of it. It'll actually put pressure on the reels like it's supposed to, so you don't lose tape speed if you have a tape that's been overwound or, you know, that's funky somehow. Brandon, get some deoxit F5. Yeah, either F5 fader lube or the D5 deoxit. I like the fader lube because I work on a lot of consoles too, and it's sort of universal that way, but either one is a good product for general cleanup. Pots, contacts, jacks, faders. Don't spray it in the transport.
Yeah, what is the deal with this toilet pick?
What is that?
It looks like Matt's holding the cassette in, it looks like, I'm guessing this might be his studio or his garage, but there's like a bunch of toilets in the shot.
That's all right. I mean,
so what's the, yeah, we got to hear,
well, if
John was asking, what's the story with that?
If you scroll across that, is there a mirror in that room? Yeah, there's a mirror, see it?
Oh, okay, that's what it is, yeah. Man,
so
you
there's
should be a
actually,
detective.
I know I should. I'm too nasty at that game. But yeah, so where are we? Can I hear the back?
So rubber O-rings?
Yeah, if you, they'll be in the plumbing section. Lowe's might even have them, or Home Depot or whatever. You know, they're used for various functions in drain work or in toilets or whatever.
Pipes and stuff.
But yeah, sure. But they're, you know, they have a relative amount of stretch to them. They're not oil impregnated, so they actually grip what they're supposed to grip. You know, and they come in like 1 million diameters and a different, you know, probably 100 different thicknesses. So if you need a real thin one to work in an 80s TAC 4-track, you know, 7 1/4 reel machine or whatever, and you can't find that on eBay or any of the parts sources, you know, there's a pretty good chance that you'll find something there that you can make work. The trick is you don't want to stretch it too much. You want it to have tension between pulleys, but if it's got too much tension, then you preload the bearings of each pressure point, basically, which puts added wear on for no reason. But, let's see.
Yeah, I was talking to Dave the other day. I don't know if I told you that.
Were you?
Yeah, I hit him up. Dave is Jay's brother. He moved out to LA for the reopening of Sound City, right?
Yeah, he was working for the guy who temporarily reopened Sound City, and then that deal sort of bombed out, and he's now working with another guy who's planning another takeover of Sound City, so he's still in the complex. And actually, if you follow me on Instagram, you can see, you go back to July, you'll see videos of me like beating on drums in Studio B, and there's video of my brother and some guys playing in Studio A. Yeah, I mean, it's It was a cool experience to go out there and check stuff out.
Yeah.
Especially the echo chamber.
Right. That's what I was hitting him up about, was the
echo chamber.
Well, plate reverb.
Oh.
I guess it's similar ballpark maybe.
I mean, it's all ambient.
Because I wanted to ask him. I got this Sound Toys sent me like a plugin. It was a free plugin, little plate or something. And
he literally was just at the Sound Toys.
that's what he said. It was like so coincidental.
Yeah, yeah.
I was like, what? Because they just bought a console from them, so it was like Helios console.
It was a Helios, fully modded by Dave Amels, who is a big name in the Helios world because he makes the Helios preamps, and he's built a bunch of really crazy gear for a lot of people. He started another company. I can't remember what it was called though. But anyway, big guy in the tech world.
Yeah, that is a great way to start off the cassette chain photo collection, Matt. Thank you so much for uploading all those. I can't wait to get a closer look at those when I'm not live streaming. But yeah, that's awesome, man. Thank you for taking all those pics. I'm excited to see what you got and listen to what you recorded, man.
No, any advice on bass recording?
Noah Days, what up?
Yeah, man. Recording bass is always tricky.
Drums too. I would say drums. Well, not for you, but drums I think is the hardest thing to record.
You know,
that's the most important thing to record well too.
Did I say it on the stream yet? I'm known for 3 things.
No, I don't think you have.
Oh, okay.
Enlighten us.
In the real world, I'm known for 3 things: being able to fix shit, getting good drum sounds, and being kind of an asshole. Those are my calling cards. So for me, drums are not really that big a deal. But and I think the third one is a little bit inaccurate.
Depends who you ask.
Yeah, I think it does. I think it totally does. I do butt heads with a lot of people though, because I have a tendency to usually think I'm right and then be right, which doesn't go so well.
People don't like that.
Not at all. Not at all. So advice on drums. With drums, you got to use your ears. You need somebody to beat on the kit, and you need to run your ears around and listen to things. If that makes you uncomfortable, put headphones on, take a mic in your hand, move that microphone around and find the sweet spots, the things you like to hear. If you're 4-tracking and you're trying to only use one input, then use that one mic wisely. Pick a pattern that makes sense. You know, unidirectional is not necessarily your friend, but it's also not necessarily your enemy. It depends on the sound you want, the room you have, the kit, how it's played. If I'm going to single mic, I tend to put one overhead directly over top of the drummer's head from the back, looking at the kit down. And you'd be surprised at how much presence you get in a mix that way.
And that's like where the drummer can hear themselves playing too.
Yeah.
So like naturally that's a good spot because drummers usually like what they hear where they're sitting.
Right. If you guys go on the post that I put on the forum today about the things that I've recorded, if you listen to the Walking Bombs tracks on there,
so you posted that.
All of the drums that I played on those Walking Bombs tracks are done with a mono overhead behind me and a kick mic. That's it. There's no close mics in any of that. So that'll give you an idea of how that worked. And that was a ADK S7B condenser, which is not an expensive or fancy mic. Tends to handle the transients well, but it's not a crazy expensive mic. When it comes to the bass,
direct in. That's what Twin said, which I would thumbs up for that.
Yeah, I'm down with direct in. Also, you know, you can take a page out of Steve Albini's book if you have a delay unit available to you, or if you're working in the box, you can do it with a plug-in delay.
Yeah, this is a cool trick. I remember you telling me this.
I just did this on our new EP, actually.
Oh, really?
Yeah, totally. So you take mic the cabinet, close mic it, get a sound you like on your bass amp, or use a guitar amp. Guitar amps are awesome for recording bass tracks, especially if you want something that's a little gritty. So mic your single speaker, single mic, so you don't have phase issues between the cabinet mics. Also take your direct in signal. If you apply somewhere between a 5 and 10 millisecond delay, all wet, no dry, so that you're actually delaying the signal, you're not adding slap or any of that kind of stuff. That slight delay lines it up in phase, and it'll take your bass signal from here to here when you do that. It'll push the DI out to the side, it'll push the amp out to the other side, and you get all this space, and it's a really nice fat bass sound. And it's super easy to do. I was doing it with a 80s SDE 1000 Roland delay, which is not a flexible or particularly fantastic unit.
Is it mess with the panning when you do that?
You don't have to, but if you do, that's where your sound field really starts to open up.
That's cool.
I mean,
you got to show me that next time we're up there.
On the bass tracks for the EP we just cut on Saturday with Surmiser, I had a bass DI coming off of his pedal board. I was running a close mic on the cabinet, and I was running a distance mic, like a 58 copy on a podium mount that I bolted to the ceiling, basically, sort of looking at the cabinet, but not in any way specific. So the resultant sound is a mix of the DI printed back through a delay without the dry signal at all, and those two mics. So the close mic and the DI delay are hard left and hard right, and then the distance mic is right up the middle, with some of the low mid pulled out to give it some space, and it's a huge bass sound even without any compression or anything crazy.
Also, I guess Noah was asking the bass idea. But also the splitting a bass signal, I think that's what you're getting at too, is like having, if you want like a distorted bass signal, one trick I always use is getting a dry sound or like the rounder sound of the bass, and then splitting the bass signal so that it's going to something like the Sans amp, where you can add the grit, add the mid-range that you want to the sound, and then just make sure that those two sounds are in phase with each other, because otherwise one may cut out frequencies that you don't want from the other. And yeah, that's a trick I always, once I started doing that, it like completely 10x my ability to record bass, because on old recordings we used to just slap on a distortion pedal and think, oh well, that's fine, and never realized that we were killing so much low end because so many distortion pedals don't allow bass frequencies through.
That's very true. One of my favorite tricks back in the day with a bass into a 4-track was actually to play the bass clean but put it through a modulation. I used to run an MXR micro flanger for that, or a phaser or whatever, something that sort of like gave it some space and fattened it up. But John asked about, he said, no on the Glyn Johns mic deal. Glyn Johns is all right. I tend to not use it just because it doesn't necessarily represent the drums in the way that I want to hear them in the mixes that I do. But I have experimented with it at length, and it does work. It's just all about what you want to hear, you know? I like my drums to kind of kick your ass, and Glyn Johns doesn't really tend to do that as much. But if you need something set way back, I would recommend that, or a Blumline array out in front of the kit with ribbon mics is really, really super cool if you need something with distance but some, a bit of definition. But I like underhead mics out in front of the kit, either omnis or cardioids, condensers as far out in front as you can get them in 3-foot increments. I usually do about 6 feet because my room is not enormous, and no overheads. If you do underheads, you kill all that cymbal, the hash, which is...
And the closer you get to the floor, the more bass you're going to pick up too. So like, I've done things where I've used 2 SM57s as the overheads, but had them about, I don't know, a couple inches off the ground, so that it's picking up the waves that are traveling more so along the ground, which are usually bass waves, or are bass waves, not usually. And like Jay's saying, then you're getting more of the drums and less of the cymbals, because cymbals always seem to be the issue. Hi-hats are always a fucking issue. Like,
well, here's what the real issue is. The issue is not the cymbals or the way that they sound. The issue is the drummer. And as a drummer, I'm gonna just give you the straight dope on it. Like, if you record drums, if you're an engineer and you understand how it works when you record drums, then you will understand how to play to the microphones. That's super important. If you put that mono overhead mic that I'm talking about and a kick mic behind somebody who doesn't understand that principle, then you just end up with garbage. What you should be doing when you track drums that way is monitoring those drums in your headphones at a fairly high level so that you can actually hear it coming back. Um, and basically what that'll do is allow you to, like, you know, in your warm-up passes, if your hi-hats are super trashy and you like it, great. But what you'll realize is in your headphones when they're cranked up, your cymbals are super loud, so you'll tend to back off your cymbals a bit and hit those drums harder, kind of Bonham style. So you maximize the effect of that single or that two mic setup by just monitoring louder and learning how to play for the mics or to the mics. It really helps you in the long run.
The drummer needs to know how to mix themselves playing the kit.
Well, that's a big part of it.
You know, I read this post one time, and it was like the 7 things you need to have a good drum sound. And the most overlooked thing, number 1 on the list, is not the room. It's not a good set of good sounding drums. It's a good drummer. That's the number 1 thing you need for a good drum sound. So number 2 is a good sounding kit.
John, so a guy did session drums, used 7 mics on your track. No idea what to do with the overheads. So approach the mix one of 2 ways if you're going to play with it. The best way to image a kit, if you want space, is to start with those overheads. Put that overhead mix up, hard pan them left and right. Do a little EQ work so that it sounds like the kit in a room. And then decide what you need. You know, your close mics at that point are basically going to bring in attack more than they're going to bring in the punch of the drum, because the rooms and the overheads are already doing that. So that's the first approach. The second approach is to put an entire mix together with the close mics only, tom, snare, kick, and then to bring those rooms up, just, you know, those overheads, whatever, bring them up just hot enough to get the definition you want out of the cymbals. You know, play around in the very top of the top end and cut out trash if you need to, but let's see. Honestly, room mic was pretty
Aaron,
deadly.
what's going on? I saw that you said, what up, nerds? I meant to give you a shout out, bro. How you doing? Trying to get that one mic 60s style drum sound.
Where do you see that? Where
Twin.
am I? I'm missing it.
Oh,
okay.
We missed a couple here, but
Yeah. Been using Twin's been using an MXL ribbon over the bass drum, almost level with the ride cymbal. Trying to get that one mic. Yeah, Twin, there's another Albini trick that's pretty badass, where you take the say a ribbon, whatever, a couple feet out in front of the kick drum, use 3 feet as your rule if you can, and set the face of the diaphragm so that it's split by the bass drum hoop as the hoop comes around in a circle. So in that acclimation, that tends to give you a really, really interesting balance on the whole rest of the kit with the kick drum, especially in a 4-piece setup. So try that. That's a really cool spot. I've been using the Sennheiser E609 in that spot for a while, and if you smash it up good, man, you really get some hot stuff out of that. So John said, I took the room mic, the kick. That sounded pretty beastly. Honestly, the room mic was pretty deadly. John, if that room mic is pretty deadly, I'm guessing you mean it's super trashy. Try, if you're in a DAW, I'm not sure what you're recording with, but if you're working with 7 tracks, I'm guessing you're in a DAW. Try cutting out stuff above like the 10K band, like shelf it off there, see if that doesn't clean up some of the trash, and try pulling out some stuff like between like maybe 5 and 7K someplace. There tends to be a lot of real brassy, nasty stuff there, and see if that doesn't clean it up. And if that doesn't clean it up, smash the shit out of it. Put a compressor on it, set the super low, like -30 or something, turn the ratio way up and play with the attack. The higher the attack is, the longer it takes for the compressor to kick in, so the more trash will be there. But also it tends to be more low end coming out in the end, so you gotta sort of play with that balance. But if you want it to really pump, set that attack, you know, kind of on the low side of the gauge, set your release all the way down, and that thing will off the hits. You really can get into some crazy effecty stuff there. So, and you know, if you get into a pinch like that, and you're having trouble figuring out what to do with that, you could always email me the track too. I could do a quick, either send it back out through my room or EQ it and send it back to you.
That would be helpful because he said I have no idea what I'm doing.
Yeah, yeah, I got it. Yeah. The Daptone style sound. John, if you want that sort of Daptone style sound, kill the hell out of the room first too.
Yeah, very dry.
Yeah.
Tips on noise reduction?
Tips on noise reduction. Yeah, don't use it. But seriously, folks.
Someone said, our amps aren't very isolated from the drums, so I'm thinking I might get a lot of bleed with the mic 3 feet out. I'm definitely going to give that a try.
Twin, so try this though. Depending on what your mic is, the polar pattern always has nulls, right? So if you have something firing at it, or the bleed, if you can put the bleed in the null, you'll minimize it. And you should always be thinking about polar patterns that way anyway. If it's unidirectional and it's like this, then anything that's here or here tends to have less, you know, effect on the composite signal that's coming out of that microphone. So if your mic in the front of the kick drum, maybe you can turn the mic just a little bit so that the guitar amp that's off to the side over here is in that null,
yeah.
And you can sort of kill some of that bleed passively, really.
He said, I believe it's a figure 8.
Figure 8, yeah. With a figure 8, you're gonna have a real hard time killing any kind of bleed because it's picking up off the back end too. Your nulls on a figure 8 mic are the sides, obviously. So the only way you could really fix that is to have the guitar amp ahead of that null somehow, or in line with that null somehow. You could just play with the position of the amps while you listen to that mic and minimize the bleed using the nulls that way. Again, headphones in a live room with hot mics is a good thing in practice, and something that everybody should really you know, give a go. Your ears are what the game is all about. It's not about graphs and pictures. It's not about what the wave looks like on a chart. It's not about setting your you know, your EQ to the same thing every time because, you know, Joe Blow in Wisconsin does it that way. None of that makes a shit. It's all about what things sound like and what you want it to sound like and how you get there. So, you know, what I say doesn't matter. What you know, the way Steve Albini EQs things doesn't matter. It's all about what the sound is, man. Like, if it takes you 14 stacked EQ plugins on a track to get the sound you're after, you know, you're maybe not working with an ideal room situation or whatever, but however you get there, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what it looks like.
Jumbo, what's a good way to mic a tambourine?
All right, that's a fun one. So on the record I just did with Globe Lamp, there's a ton of tambourine. For the tambourine on that record, I actually did a wide space stereo pair and stood her in the middle of it. Distance is your friend with a tambourine unless you want real heavy clacky attack, and most people don't want that. And if you get that attack, it's really hard to EQ it out because it's like white noise, it's wideband. So yeah, distance. Even if it's a single mic, set up a 58 and stand, you know, 5 feet from it and play the tambourine off to the side and sort of adjust for flavor, or run a stereo pair as wide as you can make it.
And make sure you have a tambourine that you like the sound of.
Yeah, that's important too. The source is, I guess I should have stated that a long time ago, but the source is way more important than the mic or how it's captured. You know,
go to the store and try out all the tambourines and figure out which one you like the sound of.
Although when it comes to things like drums, you know, like some of the worst drum kits ever could sound awesome with the right guy beating on it too. Yeah. So the player has a lot to do with it.
Yeah, it all comes down to the player.
Well, I mean, I think it's 50-50. Well, it's actually like
Dave Grohl, right? I mean, he can make any kit sound good.
Yeah, Dave Grohl could probably play on like a CB kit into like.
Did you ever see the video where he's playing on like a little kid kit?
Yeah.
That's amazing. It's like, come on.
He could play like, you know.
He can make anything sound good because he's Dave Grohl.
Yeah, but Dave Grohl also does exactly what I was talking about before, playing for the mics. He knows what the thing's supposed to sound like. So
he's a great drummer.
You could put him, you could put him like in an empty septic tank on a kid's kit with one microphone hanging in it, and what you got out of it would still be a kick-ass Dave Grohl drum performance. That's just how it works.
It's a funny picture to imagine.
Well, I mean, let's think of the least ideal situation to record in, right? Like a karaoke mic hanging in an emptied out septic tank with Dave Grohl playing a starter kit in the bottom of it. Yeah, terrible. Really, like probably the most awful thing that could ever happen.
It's all like jagged and rusted out.
Ever recorded any jazz before, Jay? No. Nope. I despise jazz and classical music. Shoot me.
Tips on getting a thicker bass tone going DI. Would getting a tube pre sound better than going straight into an interface?
If you want a thicker tone going into a DI,
I feel like the terminology is a little mixed up.
Yeah, I mean, look, there's a Whirlwind DI that I've used for years. I think it's Whirlwind anyway. We'll show it on the stream next week. It's got like a cheap transformer in it, but sounds fat as hell. I would use a transformer DI and a bass that sounds good plugged into an amp. If your bass sounds like, cheap garbage when you plug it into a decent bass amp, then it's not going to be fat no matter what you do to it. A tube pre like the Art thing, you'll add a little bit of harmonic distortion and a little more character. It might fatten it up to your ears, but if it were me, I think I would feed it straight into the interface and I would affect it afterwards with something.
And try splitting the bass signal going in too, so you have the clean sound and then a distorted sound, and just make sure they're in phase. Speaking of Dave, your video on Cobain doubling up his Vox so perfectly blew my mind. I had no idea I listened to that whole album that day. Yeah, it's pretty amazing. That's well, actually, you got the shirt.
The shirt came from the EMP Museum in Seattle for the Experience Nirvana exhibit or whatever.
Because on Nevermind, like a lot of people don't realize that the vocals are doubled on that album.
Yeah, because Butch Vig, well, the way that Butch Vig convinced Kurt Cobain to do that was by
do a practice thing.
No, it was simply by telling him that the Beatles did it. That really is, that in interviews, that's how it goes. He told them that, Lennon and McCartney and them used to double track, and that, it's really, kind of an edgy thing to do because, up until then, Kurt had pretty much done one and done tracking, like Bleach is all single track vocals.
Marathon says, "What's up? Excited to finally catch the Good Wizard J live."
Yo, that'd be me. Flat wound strings get you a pretty fat sound. Yeah, flat wounds will get you a pretty fat sound, but you'll also lose any real attack if you're, so you got to split the difference there. You could also try tape wounds if you want it thumpy, but you want a little bit of attackability.
Excited to have you, Marathon. Long time no see.
Yeah, lots of thump. Definitely lots of thump with flat wounds. Especially if you roll that tone control off as well. You get into like, I don't know, like the down low hip hop bass lines there. That would work for me, reason the Beatles.
Who wouldn't that work for?
Me.
Really? You're not a Beatles fan?
I hate the Beatles.
Really? Are you a Stones guy?
Nope.
Okay. It seems like usually people are either Beatles or Stones.
Nope. I appreciate the Beatles for the technology.
You do learn something every day.
Well, I appreciate them for the technology that they used and as people who, wrote some pretty innovative songs.
Yeah,
but as musicians, not as songwriters, but as musicians, those guys were grossly overrated.
But they had never been done before.
It hadn't, but now it's been done 600 million times. So like the fact that we're still talking about it is mind-boggling.
That's how ahead of their time they were.
Yeah, I don't know. But then how do you explain like later on like Wings, man? What was that about?
Oh, I don't know.
That shit sucks. Yeah, maybe they could, but compared to the guys that are out there today, there's like 5-year-old kids that could outplay all those dudes at the same time.
No, Jay, no. Jay, see, this, I think this is where number 3 in your list comes in, right? This is
Maybe I don't know. I mean, whatever. I don't care if you like the Beatles. That's cool. I like the gear that the Beatles recorded on, like all the custom EMI stuff that Abbey Road had, and like the fact that they were there on the cusp of mono to stereo, and then stereo to 3-track, and then 3-track to 4. But
Is that the self-titled one, Aaron? I personally enjoy Ram. The Beatles set a new standard. Martyr Art, what's going on? Especially how they push sound forward.
yeah, but if you listen to the things that they recorded that were like,
Everybody's coming out. Going toe to toe with Jay.
I'm reading whatever. I'm not even gonna argue, dude. I don't care.
I'm
Bring
with
it
John.
on.
I love these tried-in opinions.
You're not gonna change my opinion on it. Believe
Here
me.
come the Beatle White Knights.
Hold on.
I
I just got lost. Okay. Joe said, Martyr Art Joe in the house, man. Good to see you, dude. So Beatles set a new standard, especially how they push sound forward. Yeah, they pushed sound forward, but more of it had to do with the evolving studio technology at the time and the forward thinking of their engineers. They might have pushed the way that songwriting was approached forward in their own way, but to me the technology is much more interesting. Quincy Jones ain't a fan of the Beatles. Quincy Jones probably should keep his goddamn mouth shut. All these people that he just came out pooping all over made him a pile of money. And they're still feeding his old ass, so I'm not really sure he's shitting where he eats.
Frank Zappa. Shout out to Frank Zappa.
Actually, I think, Zappa did innovative things in the studio, but I think Pink Floyd actually probably takes the cake for studio innovation with, Dark Side of the Moon and all that kind of, crazy delays and the shit that they were making as it went. Multiple tape machines running 20-foot loops and, things that you could never even fathom doing today.
Oh, Marathon said the preamp pedal sounds sick, by the way. Thank you. He said, so you got the pedal going. Now hear me out, dudes. The next product should be a 4-track. This seems to come up a lot in the streams, right? This came up
Yeah,
the other
hold
day.
on though. So John, he got to weigh in on the Stooges unload. I don't know if I even want to touch that one.
Do you want to think about it and come back to it?
Not really. I mean, Iggy Pop has always looked like a corpse to me. Musically, it's pretty sloppy, but I like sloppy. There's nothing sonically super special about them except for the time it was happening. Not a terrible band, not something I listen to frequently.
It's a fun record.
Yeah, it's fun, but it's like the MC5, man. Like, once you've heard Kick Out the Jams 45 times, where else are you going? I don't know, I'm done. Let's see. So, you got the pedal going, now hear me out. Next product should be a 4-track. Nah, Marathon, the next product is already in development. It's a 2-channel stereo version of something similar to this, but geared towards more hi-fi with inductor based EQs. Yeah.
2-channel version coming out at some point. Not anytime soon, but we got some plans for future stuff, or Jay does, I should say. The thing with the 4-track producing it is it's gonna be hard to find somebody making the heads these days and the cassette transport and all that stuff.
China makes heads, but
to what extent and what quality, right? Is that the issue?
I'm trying to do the mechanical engineering and modern day production of a 4-track, especially with the rumored depletion of tape stocks would not be sensible. Could you do a true tape delay with a 4-track? You could actually. Easiest way to do it would be to open the shell and make a tape loop inside of the shell.
I've been meaning to do a video on that, actually.
Yeah, that's the easiest way to do it. You splice it, Getting the loop perfect is tricky. You'd probably want to put the reels in half of the shell in the transport and play with the the splice.
There's a YouTuber, Amulets, does like tape soundscape stuff and tape loops. So check out that channel, Amulets. He has a great video on how to make a tape loop.
What do I think about Blue Cheer? You know, my band gets compared a lot to Blue Cheer, but I don't think I've really spent a lot of time listening to them in my lifetime. So maybe I'll school up on that, and we can talk about that later. And as far as a Wiz Says series on classic albums, dude, like, you know, maybe when I start my channel on my own, we can do some. I'll do some videos about what I like and what I hate.
I'm trying to get Jay to make a channel. Let's go, Jay.
Well,
that could be like your Thursday video.
Oh my God.
Wiz Says, and it's just you talking about a classic album. Yeah. Where can I hear? Oh, I'll hook you up in the.
Yeah, you're gonna love it, I'm sure, since now you've heard my opinions. What are we doing?
Surmiser.bandcamp?
Yeah, I think that's what it is. It's either Surmiser or Surmiser NY. I think it's Surmiser.bandcamp. Try it.
Let's see.
Try it. We'll see.
Yep.
There it is.
There she goes.
Yeah. So when you go to that link, actually, the page that it opens is Bandcamp, but if you scroll a little ways down on your screen, you'll notice that this release, other than this digital format, only came out physically on cassette. So you guys should hopefully appreciate that.
Yeah.
That record was made over a 4-year span or a 3-year span. I engineered a lot of it. My brother did a few songs for us. Mike did one.
I did too.
Well, you did I put them both on? Oh yeah, Mike did too. Mike did Pin to the Wax and Hideout. Hideout's my favorite on that whole record, just about, I think.
I'm partial to Dime.
Yeah, I know. I remember. I
have my little. I think I have my little thing on here. I gotta snag the new album.
I could just give you download code for that. You know, that's sort of how it works when you're on the inside of the circle.
Yeah.
You're on the inside of the circle. Where's our chat? I'm lost.
Oh
now.
yeah, we got
sidetracked. Sorry, fam.
But yeah, check out Jay's stuff at surmiser.bandcamp.com. They just put out a new record. Yeah. If you want to hear my handiwork, check out Hideout or Pin to Wax.
Yeah. And that's a combination of DAW recording and using the 424 as front end, actually.
Oh yeah, I did bring it.
Yeah.
That's right.
And that's also my vocals for those tracks.
Beatles Hate Stream.
Some of the vocals were recorded through a Supermoon reverb into my orange clone that I built. Which is a head. So there's some pretty fancy bits of engineering there. That's the orange clone, the one I played forever.
It's like the wooden one?
It's got a giant cherry faceplate and the bright orange control panel.
Right.
I wouldn't start a Beatles hate stream. I wouldn't say that I hate them. I just don't enjoy their music. The only song of theirs that I really like is that one where I don't even know what it's called, but he's talking about blowing his mind out in a car, just because the imagery is brilliant. Blew his mind out in a car. Never noticed that the lights had changed. I don't know what the fuck that's called, but A Day in the Life, I think.
A Day in the Life, yeah.
That one I like. The rest of it can go get stuffed. But I wouldn't.
The whole channel, Jay shitting on music.
I seriously would never devote that much energy to just like negatively reviewing everybody else's music. For one thing, I don't like battling people for, over subjective opinions. Yeah. But also, like,
never leads anywhere.
What you like and what I like don't have to line up. That doesn't mean either one of us is right or wrong, or that we're bad people because we don't agree. You're more than welcome to love the Beatles. I don't care.
Killer British accent.
Yeah, I do a lot of voices, actually.
Oh, this is a good one. Brandon, one more quick cue. Mm-hmm. Thanks for all the questions tonight, Brandon.
Yeah, dude, keeping us rolling. Appreciate it.
Do you think buying a lower end reel-to-reel 4-track would sound much different than a nice 4-track cassette?
Yeah, I do. With a reel-to-reel 4-track, your tape size increases, which means your track width increases, which means your overall space for headroom and low end changes. So even a shitty reel-to-reel deck is going to be, I'm not going to say sonically superior, but certainly sonically different.
Yeah, and you got to watch
than a
out. Some of
four-track
those
cassette.
cheaper reel-to-reel 4-channel,
Suck.
they suck. So just buyer beware and check the research on them, or see what people say on the forums about them. Some of them, it's like people have them at garage sales, and
those ones
they're
are
just
shit.
complete shit.
Those
so
are shit.
Be
And
careful with the one that you get.
And also watch out for things that say like quadraphonic sound, because that has a 4-track head stack, but it is not a 4-track recorder like you're thinking about it. There was a move in the 70s to try to expand stereo beyond left and right. It was like the early predecessor to surround sound. It was garbage and it never caught on. But sometimes you'll find decks that are set up to run that, and that won't help you at all.
Is that like what's that Flaming Lips album? Did you ever hear that album?
No. Well,
like,
probably, but I don't know which one.
Zyreka, I think. It's like it has 4 discs, and you're supposed to play them all. That's like at different sound sources that you place around yourself. Kind of reminds me of that.
What do you think about tape saturation plugins versus the real thing?
That's a good one, Aaron. It's like a little distortion plugin.
Yeah, I mean that's basically what it is.
That's all it is.
But you know, the other side of that is real tape saturation. Like, how are you getting that saturation? Are you recording to the tape hot and then playing it back and bouncing it in, or are you bouncing it off of the guts? If you're just bouncing it off of the guts of the deck, like the record circuit and back out through the reproduce circuit, all you're doing is generating distortion anyway. So real tape saturation comes from overdriving the tape and then playing it back.
Yeah, overdriving a physical analog medium.
Right. Hyper exciting magnetic particles on a strip.
And I think that
Yeah, Joe, A Day in the Life. That's the song.
check out some of the. I know there's obviously YouTube. There's a cache of videos on tape saturation plugins. It's worth it to check out some of those videos, and also just like the demos of here's an A/B of with the tape saturation plugin and without it, and you can really hear what they're doing.
I gotta step out for a second.
Sure, dude.
Coffee's catching up.
I'll do my best. Yeah, the thing I've noticed about the tape saturation plugins is essentially just everything we've been saying. It's just almost just seems like a little distortion. It's adding a little bit of distortion. They have different settings on those. I don't have an amazing amount of experience with tape saturation plugins, and some of them are supposed to be better than others. But if you're thinking about getting any of them, I would say just like anything else, check YouTube. Check out somebody who has good sound samples of what the different settings do. And honestly, to me, I've listened to a couple of them because obviously I like cassette, which is different from tape, 2-inch tape. But I still like the physical realm of recording to a physical object. So, but I mean, yeah, I was always curious about getting a 2-inch machine or a 1/2-inch machine, and I figured, well, maybe these saturation plugins could do the trick. But I listened to a lot of them and the price of a lot of them, and to me, it just sounds like it's adding distortion, and not knowing necessarily it's distortion in a good way. I don't know. Or like,
no, the news was rather sad.
All
right.
That was a good bookend. So yeah. I don't know.
Man.
Be diligent about which ones you look. I'm really hoping Sound Toys comes out with something.
Twin, you're bouncing already, huh? All right. Well, next
Twin.
week we'll be on the Wednesday routine. So
yeah, Wizard Wednesdays is when we're gonna be doing Jay and I together. But like we said, tomorrow's Valentine's Day, so the partners weren't gonna be down, and last Wednesday was Blizzard Wednesday, so. So we haven't done official Wizard Wednesday. We'll have to do a celebration. Maybe get a cake or some donuts or something.
I'm always down for cake.
Can't beat that authentic tape. All right, Twin. We'll catch you on the flippity floppity.
If you guys like playing with reel-to-reel tape, also you can pretty inexpensively find old tube like Webcore small reel decks. I think they're 3.5 reels. And those are, almost all of those are tube. Some of them are mono. You can get stereo ones, but you could absolutely work on smashing tracks through that thing.
Yeah.
And they usually come with like 50 tapes, and you just whatever record over it. Who cares? There's also 3M Wallen sock machines, which are kind of like Ampex 600s in a way. Those are really cool too. And if you want to play with super alternative formats, look into Webcore wire recorders. The wire recorders are pretty interesting technology where you impose a magnetic charge on a stainless steel wire, which is totally unheard of today. Yo, where are we at now?
I'm looking for. I wanted to get your take because I thought this was super interesting because I didn't really, I just kind of said, Jay, I always wanted this in a pedal form.
Are you looking for the Why Was It Made one?
No, I'm looking for the one where you responded to the guy who wanted the. I don't see it on here.
Scroll up. Keep going. That. Oh no.
Oh, right here.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to maybe read this, and then maybe you could give us a little bit more. So I'm going back to the video on the pedal at the moment because I don't know. I thought this was super interesting. Somebody was asking about the schematic of the pedal, and I sent him over to Jay to say, Jay, what's up? Like, this is Jay's department, so this is what Jay had to say, and I want to ask you some questions about this. So. Because I feel like that's sort of where you were heading, maybe a little bit. But
I feel like you're a stronger reader than I am, so I'll just let you go ahead.
So, Joris Van Brugel was, he likes to pedal, he wanted the schematics. So Jay said, unfortunately, the schematic will remain proprietary. I went through piles of documentation and combined the best parts of the TascFam 414 and 424 preamps, and then went a bunch of steps further using my knowledge of guitar pedals and prosumer boards from the 70s, 80s. The resulting circuit is similar to a bunch of common circuits, but it's got twists that you can only find in gnarly old cheapo consoles. It is absolutely designed to blur the lines between 4 tracks, decent mic preamps, and fuzz boxes. I will say that it is built entirely of off-the-shelf parts and may be available in bare PCB form in the future. So that's a comment Jay left to the question of what's the deal with the schematics. So my question...
I think you should grab that actually as a screenshot.
Yeah, that's perfect.
My scary smile face.
All
right, as we were.
I'm going to steal that. Yeah, so I don't know. I was under the impression, I didn't realize that how much extra J special sauce you put into this pedal.
Well,
I thought this was mainly,
Well, the 414 and the 424 preamps are similar in form and obviously the same in function, really.
Because I was under the impression that's mainly what it was, but then you said this blurs the lines between 4 tracks, decent mic preamps, and fuzz boxes. Can you talk a little bit about what your thought process with blending those?
Well, the blend comes from really the similarities between, the resultant circuit that's in that box and, similarities to all of those things, really.
Yeah, that's what I thought was super interesting.
So, like, if you took the... All right, so here's how it works. Electro Harmonics put out the op-amp Muff Fuzz in the 70s, right? Everybody knows that pedal. They just reissued it. It's sounding like, great hot damn.
Now, which version is that? Revision?
The one with the op-amps. I don't know.
Is it like Ram's Head or something?
No, it's not Ram's Head. Okay. It's later than that. It's like the Billy Corgan one, whatever.
Oh, okay, like V4 or 5 or something.
Or so, I think it actually, I thought it was like 7, but I don't know.
Really? Okay.
I don't know exactly. I could look it up.
No, I wasn't sure. I just wanted to be, because I wasn't sure like what that meant.
There's only one version of the Big Muff that happened with
op-amps?
With op-amps in the traditional Big Muff package. Okay. If you lay that circuit out next to the 414 and the 424, the similarities and parallels are really obvious.
Well, that's something, not to cut you off, but Neutral Milk Hotel is known for
Big Muffin.
Overdrive. Well, live they apparently use Big Muffs a lot.
I'm sure they do.
But apparently, I know some of the recordings and some of the early Neutral Milk Hotel stuff that was on tapes that predates the official albums.
Right.
I mean, I guess they're official albums, but you can hear the sound of them overdriving or fuzzing out the. Right. I just thought that's super interesting that they wind up using. This is why I also wanted to ask you, because they wind up using Big Muffs on the stage.
So if you had the op amp Big Muff and you Now with that big muff, you can't turn the gain down far enough to make it as clean as you could make a 414. That's not a thing. The 414 has different size signal caps. The bandwidth limiting cap is different across the op amp stage where the gain is. The muff fuzz actually, I believe, doesn't have one. You know, all these things. There's low pass filter that happens in the 414 and the 424 that doesn't exist in the muff fuzz. You know, so those are the similarities there. And I played with the values of not only the bandwidth limiting of the op amp, but also the op amp itself, and that low pass filter corner frequency. And where the cheapo consoles comes in.
Yeah, I wanted to ask about that too.
So back in the day when you had a console and you wanted to adjust the gain, it was called trim, right? And trim basically turned down the gain of the head amp. And how you accomplish that was by varying a resistance to ground. In the 414 and the 424, that's a relatively small range. It's 470 ohms to 25K. What we're running is significantly greater than that. So you can get a whole lot cleaner because I'm running a higher resistance to ground at maximum, but it gets a whole lot dirtier because my minimum resistance is a whole lot less than what they're doing. So, you know,
yeah, no, it's one of the,
all these things sort of like play together.
That's why I thought that was so interesting when I read that. It never like connected in my mind that's
the other thing I want to clarify is, you know, I don't think anybody's actually asked yet, but people look at a distortion box or a fuzz box and they want to know about soft and hard clipping and diodes. There are no diodes inside of that box. The only diode is for the filtering of or polarity protection rather of the power supply. There is no diode in the signal path. Everything you're listening to, clean or dirty, is the preamp sections as they're stacked and as they're built. You know, and I tweaked values in the tone stack in that and from the 414 and 424 to sort of bring the corner frequencies more in line with, you know, those sort of cheapo consoles like the TascFam M06 and all these, you know, TIAC.
Yeah, I like that. It was kind of, you brought all this more knowledge to the pedal than just like, oh, you know, make the preamps of this machine, you know.
Yeah, well, there's not really a lot of point in straight up cloning anything if you can.
Yeah, you got to put your own twist on it.
Well, but if you can maintain somewhere within your design parameters the sound that comes out of that, but make it more variable on the top and the bottom somehow. Now you've made something that's more usable and more versatile than this could ever be, or than a muff fuzz could ever be by itself.
Yeah.
You know, the idea with this box is that, you know, you could use it as a clean mic pre if you needed to, or you could use it as an all-out, you know.
That's something I haven't really explored too much too, because I've been so interested in just fuzzing this thing.
Yeah. But I mean, it's, you know, it's a good fuzz sound.
But that's what's cool too, is that you can use it as a preamp.
Yeah, totally.
You know, you can use it for so many different things.
Totally.
Like,
and you know, going into the stereo version, I'm also working on, you know,
that's exciting.
Clip lights and phase and pad and stuff like that. You know, switching and whatever, and you know, that product will be different than this product sonically as well. So, you know,
well, that's what was interesting too. Is originally I think our thought for this was going to be a desktop unit more so than a traditional guitar style pedal. Because it's not just a guitar pedal. That's kind of what we're getting.
Right, but I like the stomp format because with an XLR in on it, I know a lot of musicians who do, you know, vocals through guitar effects, and there's always that shit show of adapters trying to make that, you know, hook up. It's always a lot easier if you can, you know, make the adaptation in a device that's usable for other things as well. So
yeah,
You
Because
know,
then it's just a one-trick pony. But this is like you
right.
can use it for a lot of different jobs,
And
which
you
is
can
cool.
use it to adapt all sorts of things. And, you know, plug in your mic into, you know, guitar effects like delays and things isn't always the best match, and it's not always the right signal level. So you end up cranking things up and adding so much noise before it
Yeah.
ever gets to an amp or a PA.
I mean, who hasn't done that?
I mean, everybody's done
That's
that.
what I mean.
And there's people touring the world right now that are, you know, working every night like that. But with this box, you don't have to do that. You could take all the edge out. Just, you know, you cut the gain and you bring the output up. It'll still be a clean preamp, but it'll match your impedance. It'll properly drive your pedal chain going down, and you can still feed it to a DI, all while decreasing that noise floor that's going out to your front of house. So what's, you know, the only thing,
or your cassette tape.
or your cassette tape. But, you know, in a live situation where a stomp box would become, you know, super practical in that capacity, I think that's the way to do it.
Yeah, Sean is actually here. I think this is the first live stream Sean has ever showed up on. He says, "What's up, Jay?"
What's up, Sean?
Sean's obviously the creator of the theme song "Down Low." So if you guys want to give him a
Nice.
shout out, he's hanging out right now, I think. So that's
I like
awesome,
that
Sean.
song.
Thanks for coming out, my friend. Everybody digging that track, Sean.
My friend just got a TascFam MSR16 rescued from a house fire. Used to record bands like Superchunk and Paulville in the 90s. A piece of history for $250. Man, John, let me tell you something about house fires, though. I've worked on projects where construction tools have been through house fires, and it wreaks havoc on anything electrical. And there's things that, you know, nooks and crannies that you won't ever be able to clean on that machine. So I would seriously look for some way to neutralize the residues from the smoke in that environment, because it's going to turn green and corrode and be toast, man. Like, you know, I had a table saw literally blow up from having been
Oh my gosh.
in that kind of environment. It's bad stuff, and it's super, super toxic. So I would proceed with caution and clean that thing up as soon as possible. Took Jason to start recording without DVX. Was pleasantly surprised by the outcome. Much more open sounding, much more high end for sure. Not as noisy as yeah, the noise reduction thing, man. Really, like, I think that's cheating for people that don't understand how to gain stage shit. You know, it's like, oh, I can crank my pre, and if I turn the DBX on, then I won't hear the hiss. Yeah, but you also won't hear anything above like 8K. So your high frequency shit, not worth it.
Yeah, I think, and also depending on the tape speed too. Like, because I remember reading somewhere that said, maybe you can speak a little bit to this, Jay. When you record, if you record it hotter, and then I don't understand how this works. You record it hotter, you record it faster, which increases the noise level of the hiss, and then later you can EQ that out.
Right. That's about emphasis, pre-emphasis, and de-emphasis, which I talk about sometimes in posts and things. Pre-emphasis is where you intentionally increase the energy in the high end.
Right.
And then de-emphasis is the action basically of shelving off or EQing out that information. Yeah, I mean, that's...
Because can you explain? I'm not quite sure I can wrap my head around how that works exactly.
Well, the idea is that by intentionally increasing that information and then intentionally in the end shelving it off by the same ratio, you end up with a cleaner product. That's I don't know, that's the best I could really explain it. But I mean, there's like clinical papers written about pre-emphasis and de-emphasis.
Yeah,
and RIA curves and all sorts of things. Yeah. But really, like, does it matter that much?
I don't know. I mean, as long as you record hot enough, like loud enough. Personally, I think that's what's missing from a lot of stuff today is it's too clean sounding and having a little bit of noise in the background.
Run it hot. Yeah. Even if it's going into your DAW, like, put a limiter on it and then run it hot. Underrunning it's not. I don't know. I feel like every time I record something, if my levels aren't hitting a certain spot, like I'm scrambling at the end to figure out a way to pump it up and get that sound to be fatter. And
yeah, that's the thing. Like
a lot of bullshit can be avoided if you sort of start out that way. Record what it is that you want to hear. Don't make it in the end.
Right. Start at the beginning and get your sound right at the beginning. Yeah.
Make your job much easier.
That's something that I mean, I always joke that it's the lazy way of doing it. I'm lazy in that I don't want to have to do much mixing at the end, but that's really the way to go. Like, because so many people have the attitude of like, I'm gonna just record everything, no matter how it sounds, and we'll fix it later.
Nah, fixing the mix is bullshit. That's how you make a lot of extra work, either for you or for somebody else.
And you'll never get it. It'll be a lot harder to get it to where you want it to sound. I don't want to say you'll never get it to where you want it to sound, but I wouldn't. That's just a nightmare.
You'll get it there eventually, but like fixing it in the mix is how you end up having to use restoration plugins on audio that you just recorded. That's not what you want. You know, if it's noisy or there's a hum in it or it's buzzing or it sounds weak, fix it before you ever print it.
Yeah. Like, the guitar doesn't sound the way you want it to sound. Figure out how to make it sound the way you want it to sound.
Do something different. Borrow gear. Call somebody to come help you tune the drums or whatever it takes. Just make sure that you're recording sources that are decent and in the way that you want to hear them. So John loves Sean's song also. Yeah, I really dig that song.
Yeah, man, that's like. When he said that to me, it was just like, I was like, I'm gonna use this for this new project I have, which is making these videos online. And now
that song was like a turning point in your life.
Deep, man. It's like
yeah.
And that's the funniest thing is that song would have just died on Sean's computer and nobody would have ever heard it. And now it's like, I know you guys are right about fixing the mix, but I think my ears might be cooked. I think what I'm gonna do is get people with good ears to mix from now on. I suck at it.
John. Your ears aren't cooked unless you have tinnitus.
That's
if you got ringing in your ears, or if you don't pass a sound test, then yeah. But otherwise, it's all about building a skill set and developing, your technique at it.
Right.
Especially if you're new to the game, like that kind of looks like a cop out. The best way to do it, if you really want to learn.
Unless he knows his ears are physically damaged.
I mean, that's very true.
But that could be a turn of phrase.
Yeah, I'm not sure. But, you also could do an attended mix with an engineer.
That's a good idea.
Where you go in and watch what they do to your project and get a little bit of better sense of, things that maybe you could try to apply on your own that would make your mix easier. But if you're working on mixes for him already.
Yeah. I'm working on one right now, and I gotta say, like, I thought the tracking that you did was great. And I'm just kind of cleaning things up, setting some levels, compressing some stuff, and it sounds awesome, man. I'm really pumped to send that over to you probably tomorrow, my friend. So, I get good guitar sounds, but the mix, I need help. TascFam. Well, that's the thing I also mentioned in the why you should always record in a real studio, because like I think that's essentially what you're saying is. You find somebody whose mixes you like, and you can pay to record with them, and then just be a fly on the wall during the process of tracking, mixing, mastering if they're doing that. I mean,
but it's
like a private class.
Yeah, totally. But you could also record on your own if you know that you can get decent sounds,
right?
And then pay somebody like you or I to either,
mix it,
let you come in, or to mix it,
and
then send it back to you, just the same.
And it's just a matter of practice, too. I mean, maybe the only difference is that people who are better at mixing than you have just mixed more. So maybe the answer, John, is to mix more yourself.
Well, the big trick to mixing is it's well past, like, turning knobs and assigning plugins and shit. It's about knowing what things sound like in your room versus what they'll sound like in your car or on a radio or on earbuds. You have to know what your space sounds like and how that translates, as much as you need to know how to work the plugins or twist the knobs or whatever, so get used to working in a space and work in it all the time. And if your space changes constantly, get a good set of headphones and work in those.
Yeah.
Experiment that way.
At least you'll know what it sounds like in those headphones. Get one pair and stick with that pair.
You have to have a point of reference that doesn't change.
And the other thing, too, is like my car I think I mentioned this in one of the videos. It's a Nissan Sentra, crappy like 12-year-old car. I mean, it's in good shape, but I know what things sound like in there. So I've listened to things in that car for 12 years or
Check this
less.
out. So John says, okay, here's where I get confused. Albini said he rarely EQs stuff, but I read other things where people are EQing the shit out of everything. I read about all this stuff, but it's very, very confusing. Albini doesn't tend to EQ all that much because Albini is working
ahead of his mix.
Yeah, he's mixing shit before he's even, put tape on the machine. Yeah. He's, his mic positions are calculated based on his ears.
He's building the mix as he's going.
Yeah, and he puts a lot of mics on a drum kit, somewhere between 9 and 14 mics traditionally on his drum sounds, which, that's kind of actually a staggering amount to mix. They bust down to, 4 tracks or 8 tracks or whatever on his tape machine, but
he knows what his room sounds like. He knows what the mics sound like.
Totally. He designed his room. Yeah. He laid out his control room. He sits in front of the same kind of monitors in either A or B every single day. But also people look at EQ as the one of two ways. They either look at it as their fail-safe or their enemy, I guess. There's nothing wrong with EQ and stuff if you need to, but it's better if you don't have to EQ the living shit out of it. If you're making little small notches and things that narrow cues and you're taking a shit ton out, eventually your sources are going to start to sound small and weird. So if you're going to EQ, like, your better bet is to take a small bit out and keep the cue wide so that it sounds natural. But really, like, mic placement is super key.
Yeah, I think
to avoid that, and that's where Albini gets away with it. I mean, he easily could EQ the living shit out of the whole thing. There's plenty of EQ, but
I mean, too, a good place to start with EQ, John. At least for me, this is what start with just shelving like a low shelf or a high end shelf, and just hear what the sweep sounds like as you're going across, because then maybe that'll at least give you an idea of where that stuff sits in a mix as you're going across.
Yeah,
so like a bass sound or drum, like a drum bus or something.
Yeah.
Then you can at least sound like, okay, well, when I get to this point, all the low end drops out of the kick or something, or when I get to this point, this is where the guitar comes alive. Like, I don't know.
Every instrument you record, each drum singularly will have its sort of peak resonant frequency, right? So maybe like the low end in your floor tom, let's say, peaks at 75. That's where its lowest and strongest resonant frequency is, So you got to play to the strengths of that. Like, if you need more low end out of your floor tom, that you can go there and grab it and crank it up. But try to just make general EQ cuts until you learn. Because if you learn by EQing the fuck out of everything, you're never going to get a mix that you like.
Yeah, and that goes back to fixing it in the mix.
Well, I mean, yeah, that's part of it, but it's also like, as an engineer, trying to gain experience, you will tend to do shit that sounds pretty bad.
That's how you gotta learn, though.
Totally, but I sort of get nostalgic about things that I used to record because I was sort of hesitant to do much of any EQ back then, other than like additive EQ. I would boost the shit out of the low end and the kick drum and whatever going in. But spending time in live sound, I caught on to using subtractive EQ only, and you just use that to tweak things out and tighten stuff up. But you got to experiment. That's the name of the game.
I've read tutorials that say to roll off the low end on everything but bass and kick, but this other guy said it made his mixes sound thin. Damn it.
Yeah, John, man, like, there's no universal rule for that.
Yeah. Every mix is different too, right?
Totally. And rolling off the low end on everything but bass and kick, like, you gotta qualify that somehow. What low end at what corner frequency? Like,
yeah.
Are you shelving off everything at 200 and leaving the bass and the kick complete? That'd be a giant hole in your low mid if you did that.
What's up, Coop?
The kick would be, you know, beating ass, and the bass guitar would be thick as hell, but, you know, guitar exists there too. So, you know, try not EQing your kick drum at all. Play with, you know, somewhere around 150 or so in the bass guitar to make it sit. Take a little notch out there, maybe wide Q, just pull some of that down. You know, and traditional wisdom, if you will, says to shelf your guitars off. You know, a lot of guys go up to 120 hertz, which is crazy. Try pulling out some of the 80 hertz in your guitar and leave everything else intact. See what that does for you. I mean, you know, there's no golden rule that says, you know, guitars can't exist in the under 100 range, or that bass has to exist in the, you know, the 3K plus range. It's, you know, totally, you got to work on it to mess around with the mix.
Yeah, I think
getting the bass to sit with the kick. You want a trick to get the bass to sit with the kick. If you're in a DAW, pan the kick drum and the bass, make sure all that's dead center. Set a high Q in your bass guitar, somewhere in the low end, so that you can sweep it around, and crank your monitors up. And you'll hit a specific frequency in the bass guitar where you can't really hear the low end of the kick drum anymore. That's the spot where those two are
fighting.
They're fighting. They're canceling each other out. So once you know what that frequency is, if you start pulling a little notch and making that Q a little wider, you should hear the two sort of interlace when you do that. But, you know, like, the kick doesn't just occupy the subsonics or the low mids, neither does the bass nor the guitar. Everything is sort of wide frequency band. So you have to, mixing is about making those things interlace or not interlace, depending on what it is. Like, lead vocal, you don't want to, like, lay that into the kick drum. That would be sort of counterintuitive, unless you're mixing some really weird shit. I mean, sometimes, but
you got to determine who's going to be the king of the low end, either the kick or the bass.
Well, the other thing, like in electronic music, there's a lot of times where they'll take they'll put a compressor on the bass guitar and they'll sidechain it to the kick, so that when the kick hits, it pulls the bass down slightly. It's called a ducker, and that's a way of avoiding having to give up low end on either one. You're making room for one or the other by compressing
that's cool.
the opposing one. Yeah, but it sounds like shit.
Well,
if you're not
in
making
the context of electronic,
if you're not making EDM, it's. I mean, the other day I was just experimenting with this again because I sort of had forgotten how bad it was. You know, doing some really thick mixes on the new Surmiser stuff, and I was just looking for different ways to add like a little bit of vibe to, you know, what I was trying to accomplish there. And John, the other reason that low end is especially tricky is because of what I said about monitoring. You know, high frequency is pretty easy to control in a room,
right?
Which makes it easy to correct in your monitoring situation. Low end, on the other hand, is not so much. You know, trying to neutralize a big bass hump in your room response where you're monitoring, that's a huge undertaking for most home recordists.
Yeah, I think the low end is really what separates somebody who knows what they're doing with a mix and somebody who doesn't. Because I noticed a lot of things. I know I mixed when I was more of a novice and didn't know what the hell I was doing. At the low end was the trickiest thing to get right.
But you know, the other part of that too is, like, everybody who ever mixes a drum kit puts so much emphasis on low end. There's a lot of great mixes out there. You know, everybody's talking about the Beatles before. You listen to the Beatles, like, the kick drum sounds on a Beatles record, for the most part, really couldn't be any further away from, you know, the modern kick drum scooped low mid sound. You know, those drums had a ton of high and low mid in them, not much low end, because that wasn't really happening. And you know, that was the kick drum sound. So decide what kick drum sound you like before you try to achieve that kick drum sound.
What's your style?
Yeah, I mean, if your band is you know, if you sound like the Strokes, then you don't want to try to get drum sounds that sound like the Deftones. It's not gonna fucking work. It's the wrong thing.
Yeah.
Even if you could get your drum kit to come together, the rest of the instruments stylistically that you stacked on it wouldn't work with those things together. So you have to decide sort of what your aesthetic is before you try to mix it in.
And that's like the classic trope too. Is like a band comes to the studio and says, "We want to sound like Interpol," but your band sounds nothing like Interpol.
But this is what I do when I bring a band in. Like I just did the Kitty Fisher Army sessions, you know.
Okay.
And in conversation prior to that, you know, I asked about, like, you know, what do you want your bass guitar to sound like? She said, I really like the sounds of Sublime. Okay. So Sublime has a super low end, you know, fundamental in the bass guitar, but not tons of crispy high stuff, not a ton of high mid stuff. And the guitar player, you know, he's like, oh, you know, I like this song by this band, and then, you know, so I listen to that song, and it's like, all right, so that's, you know, that's a lot of, like, sort of crunchy high mid stuff. Okay, so now we got two things that are going to work together, sort of. And then the drummer says, well, you know, I like super dry up close drum sounds, but I also like the Albini thing where it's super roomy. Okay, so we get a roomy drum sound that has sort of dry close mics when things need to punch through. And, you know, it's really easy to make those things fit together once you assess what the aesthetic needs to be. But if you don't know those components, if a band comes in and just says, you know, we're you know, an AC/DC cover band, but we want to sound like fucking Tool.
Kitty Fisher sounds like they have a good idea of what they want to sound like. I guess I'm referring to bands that are just kind of like...
Right, but, you know, I think when bands make blanket statements like, we want to sound like you're completely omitting your personal aesthetic. You know, each guy in the band wants to sound a little different.
Right.
So if you can assess those things separately...
That's a really good...
and come to consensus, you'll open the middle ground up for yourself.
Maybe I should get the Behringer mono speaker and mix through that. You're talking about this guy back here, the baritone?
That's going to give you a really good idea of low, mid, and mid-range sort of stuff.
Yeah.
But look, John, if like the problem you're having with low end, is it the subsonic stuff? Is it super like, you know, like the 55, 60 hertz band? Or is it that like all your low end is sort of like building up in the low mids?
Yeah, is it getting muddy?
Is it muddy and sort of boxy and like you don't have space left anymore?
I said yeah, all mono.
Because if that's the case, you know, the thing that really adds dimension to a mix is playing around with those low mids. You know, if like the toms in your mix feel like they're punching you in the face even after you've done all sorts of shit to it, like, you know, maybe grab an EQ in the 1 to 250 somewhere range and notch some of that out and see what it does. See if that doesn't open things up a little bit.
He said, yeah, muddy as shit.
Yeah, so clean up your low mids. Don't look at the low end as much, you know. You're going to want to shelf off, like most mastering engineers hard shelf at 40 hertz. That's fairly standard. But that's not what you're fighting. What you're fighting is that, you know, probably more like 1 to 300 hertz in that range someplace.
Because between the drums, the bass, and the guitars, they're all going to be somewhere.
Everybody's fighting for that, yeah.
Right, so you got to determine who's going to be the king of that territory, or who's going to be more prevalent in each frequency bands.
But if you consider that a guitar ranges somewhere between 78 hertz up to, you know, maybe, I don't know, 8K, 10K tops. You know, most of the energy of that instrument, most of the energy of the bass guitar especially, is going to be focused right in that range we're talking about. So those are where you need to make your careful adjustments, either with mic position or with EQ later.
And that's probably why you're saying some people say it sounds thin when you shelf everything off at a certain point.
Yeah, I mean, shelving it off...
You're taking away all that energy.
You are, and you're also taking away... you know, some of that subsonic energy actually will add dimension to your music as well. Like, you know, 55 hertz, you know, is really low, but if you add a dB or two of that to your kick drum after you scoop out some of the shit that's making it muddy and kind of boxy sounding, that becomes a whole lot bigger drum and it packs more punch than it did when it started. And the side effect of that is you have more room for the bass to be fuller because the bass isn't down that far. most likely.
Yeah, usually kick is lowest and then bass is above that. That's how I always think about it.
Yeah, but I mean, if you're
I mean,
doing...
I've heard mixes where the bass is lower than the kick, but I
Sure.
guess that's what I was saying before, is you got to determine who is where in that area of the spectrum. Is the kick lower than the bass, or is the bass lower than... Who's the bottom piece of bread of the sandwich?
Right. Yeah. But cleaning up the mud is always going to be in that low-mid thing, because there's a lot of things fighting for that.
Yeah. Well, that's where it all gets muddy, because everything exists in that low mid energy area.
And there's a lot of things you can do too besides EQ. You know, you can do things like multi-band compression. That'll help control some of those frequencies without you totally losing them in an instrument. But yeah, I mean, that would be my advice. And a good set of headphones to help you monitor will change the way that mix is sounded to you.
And try to use the same set or the
Every
same
time.
pair of speakers, the same
And try
setup in your car.
And before you try to mix anything on whatever those headphones or speakers are, spend some time listening to your favorite music through them.
Or have a track you're comparing your mix to.
Muddy mix.
What's up, Billy? What is the difference between a muddy mix and frequencies canceling themselves out? So is that referring to phasing?
Well, yeah, frequency cancellation would be phasing issues. Which, I mean, I guess in itself could sort of add the idea of mud. But a muddy mix is usually a buildup of too many, competing frequencies in the same range.
Same range, yeah. Yeah, so like one of them is going to be, well, the muddy mix is going to be too many things competing for the same frequency area, and then canceling is going to be things that are, when you add things together, they're going to be sounding thinner rather than fuller.
Yeah.
What it is, Exodus, what's going on, my friend?
John, okay, a lot of what I read advises record low levels. John, I'm much more a fan of recording things on the hotter side and trying to lose the gain later than I am recording stuff on the cold side and trying to pump it up and make it bigger. Anytime you have to add gain, you're almost guaranteed to have to add compression, and you don't have to compress everything. Like, you don't have to compress anything if you don't want to.
Right.
It's not...
If you record it at the right level.
Well, even if you don't record it at the right level, there's no rule in any book anywhere that says you have to compress X. It's not a thing. Like, if you don't like the way the kick drum or snare compression sounds, don't fucking use it. You don't have to.
I said because
there's no rule.
recording in the low level washes things out when you add compression.
Well, it will wash things out at a low level when you add compression, if all you do is add compression. When you add makeup gain back in, then you start to get things like pump, because you're juicing that compressor's input or output so hard to get that level up. So yeah, I guess I would generally agree with that.
There also is a sweet spot when it comes to digital recording, and every DAW is different, and the meters aren't always accurate. So you got to kind of figure out if you're using a DAW, and it's obviously different than the 4-track too. I mean, the 4-track meters go to plus 6 decibels, and I got to tell you, a lot of the times I'm recording on that, I'm at least plus 3 RMS and then plus 6 peaking. So, but on digital, it's a whole different story, and depending on what DAW you have. I think in Logic they say the sweet spot is -12 to -9. That's,
I have no idea.
Well, in my DAW Logic, which I use often, Logic Pro X, I know that between -12 and -9 is the sweet spot of recording for my particular DAW and digital recording and what I'm doing. So,
a lot of times recently when I open a project and make a template, I'm banging a limiter right on the output. I'm cranking that limiter up to +1 with little to no added gain, and I'm hitting that fucking thing from the minute I start tracking. That's sort of my new feels for
yeah, that's a good point too. Actually, it says it also depends on bit rate, sample rate, and headroom.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's why it gets tricky, because there's all these factors and everything is different. You have different meters on everything, and you got to kind of figure out, I don't know, what the meters are really reading on each piece of gear that you're recording through.
Yeah. John said I should do a whole thing on compression. It's so unbelievably confusing.
Yeah.
You know, John, the different kinds of compression and how you use it on different things is you know, oh man, it's like it's totally subjective. Like, you know, maybe you like VCA compression at a high ratio on kick drum, or maybe you like I don't know, man, like opto compression on the snare.
What would
whatever.
be a good compressor, simple compressor for John to start out with? Probably like a two knob to get an idea of what the basic
Dude, the simplest compressor
and output is.
simplest compressor you could ever buy is the 163X DBX. It's a half rack unit. It's got a single slider and a gain adjust on it. You slide the slider one way for more compression, and you slide it the other way for less, and it automatically adjusts the.
Yeah, I would say start out with a simple compressor so you can wrap your head around what is this thing actually doing.
The easiest way to understand what compression is doing is to enable one on your channel strip or to plug one in line and fuck around with it. Yeah.
That's I mean, find a good. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, what's a good one we could recommend to start with?
Well, that's the 163X is the one that I would start with if I was gonna look for the simplest compressor ever made. It has one slider and a makeup gain pot. You know, you really can't. It doesn't get any simpler than that. But it removes things like the attack and release controls and automates them based on that slider position, which doesn't really teach you anything. It's sort of like cheater compression.
Oh, I think I know what you're referring to, actually. This Focusrite big thing they're selling. It's a one-channel mic pre. I think Dave used to have. Dave has that Focusrite channel strip. I remember, and it was two different Focusrite, and I remember him saying,
I don't know.
I'll find it.
Hold on, somebody's asking about the preamp. He's a Keeley 4 knob on a lot of things. You know, guitar pedals would be a fun place to start experimenting with compression if you need something that's easier to understand. That Keeley 4 knob thing,
that's
or
what Matt has. I think he said.
Dude, or the I'm blanking on it now. The MXR Dynacomp. That's two knobs, threshold and output level.
I think this is the thing he's talking about.
Oh yeah, the ISA one.
Yeah. Let me get a link. Make sure. Yeah, Exodus. Is it the ISA one you're talking about? ISA one, Focusrite. Why isn't this?
ISA one.
Copy link. All right. Let's see. I think that's what he's referring to.
We're back.
Is this it, Exodus? I think that's what you were talking about, right?
Skiz, I only use multi-band compression when mastering tracks also. I'm not a huge fan of multi-band compression for anything other than final ultimate control of
it's a really
high energy dynamics. It really, like, I tend to just add a tiny touch of it, you know, on my mid-range bands, and I try to leave everything else alone because it's very, very apparent if you even slightly overdo it.
It's very powerful, the multi-band compressor.
Extremely. It also eats a lot of CPU. So, you know, guys talking about using 5 or 6 of them on a mix, I don't know what the hell you're tracking with, but my computer would explode if I put that many on. I'd never be able to start or stop the playback ever.
Exodus said I run my drum machine through my Behringer compressor sustainer, and they sound huge on tape.
I'm sure they do.
Yeah, so that's the thing, the ISA one. I've never used that. Have you ever used that ISA? No.
Nah.
We never used the Focusrite, Exodus.
But you know, simple compression or compressors that you guys can get started with too. I mean, everybody gives it a bad rap, but that Alesis 3630, like, if you get one of those, they're about somewhere between $20 and $50. You can get a really good idea really quick about what the parameters do on that machine. It's really easy to destroy things and make them sound terrible or to make them sound really cool. It has more knobs than, you know, any of the simpler ones, but the adjustment of those parameters is much more apparent than, you know, something like maybe a Neve bus compressor or whatever.
Yo, John, what is your DAW setup? Like, what are you mixing into? Are you using a PC, Mac? Like, what's your program? What kind of plugins you have? I'm just curious because I mean, there should be some free plugins within your DAW, depending on which one you have that you can fuck around with.
EST version of the talkback mic, the Phil Collins. The Phil Collins drum sound is a gated reverb. Originally, you're right, it was the talkback mic, but that became everything we know about gated reverbs of the 80s and 90s.
It's a guitar pedal you can use on anything. It's based on a Ross.
Oh yeah, Ross shit was sweet, man. Crazy recessed knobs and stuff.
Studio comp.
Alright, I gotta step out again.
All right.
Bladder like a walnut, y'all.
Jay's got to hit the toilet, so you're stuck with me for now.
Wizard whizzing Wednesdays.
Wizard Whizzing Wednesdays. That's going to be next week. Yeah, Jeb, what just curious, my friend, what DAW are you using? What are you, what are you running through? Zoom R16, Fruity Loops. Yo, Sean, what's going on? Sean's back in the stream. If you guys want to ask Sean anything, he's right there. That's the guy who recorded Down Low. You got anything you want to say? This is his first time he's hanging out. We got Sean. This is awesome. Sean, what's up? Him and Mary recorded the theme song Down Low. So he's here now if you guys want to congratulate him on his awesome song or, just ignore him. Not necessarily what a compressor is supposed to do. Sean, what interface did you use on Down Low? I think he used the Focusrite I sold him. Let's see.
Hey, Ma, shut her down.
Sean's back. So John said he's using Zoom R16, Fruity Loops. I have this Butch Vig vocal plug.
yeah.
And a de-esser.
Butch Vig VSTs, yeah.
Is that something he can fuck? Yeah, I mean, fuck her. It
Yeah.
has a compressor on it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's all a de-esser is anyway, too.
Basically. You can also, if you have to de-ess the shit out of something, the de-esser will become very obvious in your vocal mix, which sucks. So learn how to also use a super narrow Q EQ to pull out some of that garbage. You got a low battery warning there.
Oh, shit, okay.
Yeah, I'm going to plug that in. Cat Bro.
Capro's here. Let me see. I think it's this one, the one that I sold Sean. Let's see.
Is it the Pro 40 like what I've got?
No, he actually has them
Going up from that?
Sean's interface is it's a Focusrite 2i4, I think. Yeah, Sean. I mean, Sean is he's what's known as an idiot savant. He doesn't really know what he's doing, but he's a genius. So I don't know how it works out, but
none of us really know
think
what we're doing. We just put it in a pretty package.
He can test to that.
Cat Bro.
But maybe, oh yeah. So I did the acoustic. I did the guitar acoustic and mess with it so to make it sound electric, that's really cool, Sean. It's red, yeah. Yeah, I'm doing as much as possible with the 488 from now on, but back to the DAW if need be. Yeah, I was just saying with the DAW, if you're running, I'm assuming you have a PC if you have Fruity Loops, right? That's the PC only.
I have no idea. I haven't used Fruity Loops since like 2008.
What I was gonna say was PC, I think, has so many more free VST plugins that you can download. So I guess what I'm saying is look at some of the classic compressors, look at some of the tune-up stuff, and download some free plugs. And just like Jay's saying, fuck around with them. Get an idea of what does this thing do.
Yeah.
Whatever you do is good. That song is badass. I totally second that. PC, yeah. So PC is known. I mean, there's stuff I've been wanting to get plugins here and there for free that I've researched, and one of them was like the compressor from Tame Impala. I think it's like a DBX 165A. I think I was telling you about that because I was super interested because I love the drum sound on those records, and they don't make as far as I know, a Mac download of that compressor, but there's one for PC, but you can't run it on a Mac unless you do some crazy.
You need a wrapper.
What's that?
That's a program that wraps that VST that you're
Right,
getting.
in like a Windows environment, right?
Yeah. But
yeah,
I've run.
I lost. I was like,
I used to run like some OG like TDM plugins that way in a Windows machine though with a VST wrapper. Really? It works.
Yeah, so I guess what I'm trying to say is there's a universe of free plugins out there for PCs for sure. So, you know, see what you can download that's an emulation of, you know, the classic compressors. There's got to be free versions.
I haven't used software since like 2008.
Damn, that's like 10 years strong, buddy.
Damn.
I got a really good vocal sound with a shitty Samson 31S dynamic vocal mic with a pop filter made from pantyhose and wire coat hanger.
Yep.
Plugged into 424, recorded at around +3. There you go. That's the longest run-on sentence I've seen in a while. Gaining about 2 o'clock. Jeremy, I have no doubt, sir. Most happy accidents happen in analog gear versus digital. Yeah, I would agree with that. I think with analog gear, you kind of like, at least in my personal experience, it's like I let things go more and like let loose a little bit more, and then when I listen back to it, it's kind of, I capture that like lightning in a bottle, you know, something quirky I did or like weird that I recorded.
You want to know why that is?
Why?
Because when you have physical knobs that you can fiddle fuck with, you will do things that you will never try to do when you're actually thinking about turning a wheel with a mouse pointer.
Yeah, right. Yeah, the tactile.
There's way too much calculation. When you actually have something that you can physically touch, all kinds of weird things happen. It's like plugging in and unplugging connectors. Like if you were patching digitally, you'd never change anything.
John said that tape compresses things already. No. Are you talking about a cassette tape or? I don't know if I missed something.
All tape lends some sort of compression just based on the way that the technology works.
Yeah, because it's a physical format. There's only so much room.
Right.
Different mixers and extra gear add character, especially synths and no screen. No, not without distortion job. Yeah, cassette tape seems to blend already. Yeah, I would agree with that.
Yeah.
Because there, like I said, there's only you hit a physical limit with it.
Pretty much.
And it adds a certain tape distortion, and I think the hiss is a big part of the sound and a big part of the glue that keeps the sound together more.
Now there's an interesting point, and one that we should probably talk about. Exodus said everything sits better using analog summing. That is a very interesting touch point, because it seems to be a sales pitch from many major companies. It's accurate to some degree, but it's something that people don't seem to understand. When you passively mix something, you're using resistors, which not only have an ohms value, but they also have inductance and capacitance. So each one of those resistors that it passes through in passive summing is lending character to something. It's subtracting something. There's a filtration that's happening that way. Transformers also, people like to send 2 buses out through transformers because it adds some mojo character. What you're really doing is adding passive color to the sound before you put it all together. Part of it's mojo shit. There's, scientifically it'd be tough to prove that it actually does anything. But you're right, when you analog some stuff, it comes together in a way that you can't make anything else come together. That's why even if you record digital, if you send back out through, let's say, 8 channels into an analog console and all you're doing is playing with faders, don't even touch the EQ, what comes out the other end definitely changes everything about,
Well, it sounds like you're saying it's going through a physical component.
It is, yeah. I mean, there's, when you bring it into the real world, it's like, stepping out of the closet of Narnia or some shit. But, smooths out your dynamics, yeah, to a degree, but based on the fact that it's passing through that sort of filtration network. Also, things like transformers induce phase shift, which, affect different frequencies in different ways across the spectrum, which also acts like a filter.
I think Matt was saying you'll never get enough clean compression. Compressors like overdrive, and then that's when you smooth out your dynamics. Isn't that the nature sort of distortion?
What's that?
Well, I mean, just like a distortion wave, or like when you look at something that's distorted, it's being compressed. No,
it is
depression.
It's being
depression.
Yeah,
distortion is a form of compression.
Well, it is just like compression and sustain and distortion all sort of run within the same category. But yeah, totally. I mean, what happens when you run out of headroom is a form of compression. However, when you look at it, it's actually distortion. You're basically limiting the dynamics and bandwidth of a signal.
Cutting it off.
But yeah, chopping it off, and it has to go someplace. The only place it can go is squash. Everybody should look up how a bunny sounds if you want a better idea of what all these things are. It's
Google
brilliant.
that.
Google it. How a bunny sounds.
Extortion is a side effect of depression.
Yeah, I guess it could be. Jay Mascis has a huge array of analog gear he runs through, but then edits digital. I don't know that I would necessarily. I mean, he's got, in his house studio, he's got a console and he's got a guy that runs that, and they track it in Pro Tools. So yeah, I guess what Jay Mascis really has is a shit ton of analog pedals and a bunch of really loud stacks. And in person, he's one of the most deadpan people I've ever talked to. Yeah, super weird guy. But as far as, analog gear, it's more about analog front end and shit for them. It's still a Pro Tools based system.
Well, what's that mixer you kind of built for Dave that he always uses or used to use?
It's a.
Does he like the sound of that, right? Because that's why he tracked things through it.
Yeah, it's a Stevenson 100 series console, using mostly 100B strips. And actually, that Stevenson console is part of like my inspiration for the 2-channel.
Oh yeah, that's right.
V2 unit, because the Stevenson has a really cool EQ inductor based in it, and yeah, you guys are gonna like that one too. Compression is like overdrive for clean guitar tones. It sounds lovely. Moderation. Yeah, distortion has an interesting effect on a mix. Either the broad spectrum of the mix or on individual components, like distorting a snare drum or layering in a distorted copy of a vocal take or something. It helps things tuck in or stand out, or, any range in between, basically. So yeah, distortion in general is your friend as long as it's not digital clipping on the front end of your interface.
Right.
That's ugly and it's hard to fix.
That's where the confusion, I think, initially came when people were switching over to digital from the analog world. Was, well, we got to hit this hot, but
yeah, there was a lack of explanation, I think, on the part of the, and there was also like, there's a million different standards for how you, quantify levels. If you're talking about dBm or dBu or VU or, he said, she said, whatever. I mean, there's a million different standards out there, and there's a graph that you actually can download. I forget where it is.
John's got some kind words for you, Jay.
Thanks, John. That Surmiser stuff, if you're listening to it right now, the subsonic panic alarm I did with all analog front end into an ADAT, analog mixed and dumped into a DAW for the final bounce. It was really rough, and I was not comfortable singing yet.
Thoughts on IRs?
Yeah, dude, I love impulse responses. That's what you mean? Skiz, impulse responses. John,
this looks like a cool video too. It's like Jay
hold on.
Jay Mascis in the studio. We'll have to check
so
that
out. Going back to the Surmiser stuff, we spent on the second record, Sempiternum, we spent like 9 days straight in the studio recording into Logic 9. There's like 15 different guitar amp and guitar combinations on that, and a whole shit ton of weird pedals and stuff. We had it spread out across this whole log cabin. And then the last one, I Saw, I Left. That was recorded a little bit here, there, and everywhere on all sorts of different rigs and things, but mostly into digital. But yeah, I appreciate the kudos on that. We have a lot of fun as a band, and you know,
yeah, man, you guys
tend
make
to stay
stuff
pretty
happen,
excited
man.
about it.
This is ADATs. Don't get Jay started on ADATs. Hey, Bobby, what's going on? The sound of ADATs.
All right,
Oh,
so Skiz, yes, I like IRs. I have a whole collection that I've made all over the place.
Some you can't talk about.
Some I can't really talk about that I probably legally wasn't allowed to make. But, you know, they're badass nonetheless. Exodus, ADATs. Dude, ADATs have a character that you can't replicate other places. I can't really explain it. The converters in them basically suck. The bit rate's low, in and out. You know, it's... but it's a magic thing. I mean, the low end that comes out of one of those machines is certainly special. I have an ADAT XT, which is like the champagne-y kind of silver face joint. I have not had problems with dropouts, but my machine has fairly low hours on the head, so that's a big part of that, I think.
Moore radar cab Simpel. It's amazing. You can customize 36 impulse responses. Never heard of that one.
I don't know that one. I do know how to model speaker cabs though, so if you guys ever want a tutorial on that kind of shit.
That's cool.
Yeah, the ADAT XT, man. It's really nice if you have the XT with either the LRC or the BRC, the remote controls. Someday I'll have a BRC. I would really love it.
Use Super VHS or the actual tapes?
I have used SVHS, but usually I cut on Maxell ADAT tapes. Also, yeah, I paid about $75 for mine on eBay. You can get an ADAT head cleaner cassette. That helped, beyond helped with, you know, getting mine back in shape when I bought it because it had sat for a long time. But I think mine has like, I don't know, 500 or 600 hours on it. So it's pretty.
Is that a lot?
Pretty young.
Oh.
No, I think the heads are
I know nothing about ADATs.
I think the heads are usually supposed to be good for 1,500 or 2,000 hours or something.
What mixer do you use with yours?
I've used a couple different mixers with mine. I really liked, I had a Mackie 1604 VLZ. That was really cool going into that thing. I got really mad about having to put like ribbon cables in it every year because I was dragging it around and doing all kinds of remote stuff with it, so I dismantled that thing and threw it away. So the last sessions I did into that, I was using a Soundcraft, I think it's an M12, it's a 12 channel, 8 direct out, no subgroup kind of setup. That works alright. It's not my favorite console. And now I just did a bunch of resto on my TascFam 5 series 8 channel console, which is 4 subgroups, stereo master. So if I do ADAT again, it will be with that.
Can't figure out the TRS insert.
Needle TascFam with tape ins, outs.
So it's like RCAs.
Exodus, how do you mean? TRS insert shit. Are you trying to connect the ADAT to the inserts on a board? Is that? I'm not too sure. Expand on that a little. I think new bounce into my trusty forehead Panasonic VCR. Ever done this? You know, I had a VCR for a while that I had planned to do that with. I have not ever done it. I have seen it done and I have heard it. And it's a really, really interesting thing. The hardest part about that is monitoring the level that's actually going to the tape. because you can clip the front end of that thing and you'll never even know it. So you'll have to experiment with, you know, how hot you run it and sort of get a feel for it. But it does really sound cool, definitely.
Like 8 ins and outs.
Well, Exodus, what are you running for a console that you're having trouble figuring out? Like 8 ins and outs direct. So, if I'm understanding what you're asking me, you're talking about using a console inline with that machine, like so that you can send to it and return from it on the same board. Easiest way to do that, get a board that has direct outputs and line inputs switchable on each channel. Your direct input would feed the tape input, and the output would feed the line input on the same channel. You have to make sure you mute your direct outputs before you unmute the line input for the return, or you'll have a feedback loop. But that's the easiest way to do it.
I think they're less expensive, right?
What?
VHS tapes, more or less expensive? I think they're more available. I could be wrong.
I'm really not too sure about that. Thought about Elisa Studio 24. Old mixers had tape outs. Yes, what you said. Yeah, I mean, using it inline, it doesn't necessarily have to have something that's called a tape in or tape out. It's really about the routing. So if your directs from each channel fed the input of the tape, and then the corresponding return fed the line input on the same channel, as long as the direct and the line input are never active at the same time, you could toggle between the two. So you could you could print to track 1 while monitoring tracks 2 through 8, let's say, with an ADAT, if you use the console that way. As long as 2 through 8, the directs are muted and the line inputs are enabled, it'll work inline that way. And you just need to toggle in between those. But doing it on an insert, I wouldn't. You know, if you took a TRS insert, the tip is send, that's going to be right after the headphone amp, pre-fade or pre-EQ on almost anything. You'll be driving the shit out of that front end of that poor ADAT before you ever, you know, get a return signal to work with on the rest of the channel strip. So I wouldn't do it that way.
Can't figure. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. This is out of my wheelhouse. I have no idea.
Well, with the 1604, that actually is set up to run as a split console. So you have the 8 directs off of 1 through 8 would hook to the tape inputs, and then outputs 1 through 8 would hook to 9 through 16. And then you would toggle those to your subgroup and to your master mix.
Cat Bros here.
I mean, other than that, I guess I would have to look at it again. I was using a 1604 VLZ. The CR is a whole lot lighter on features.
Cat Bro, what's up?
What are you doing, dude?
It's getting hungry. It's his dinner time. Cat Bro's chilling with us. He's rubbing up on everything.
Excuse me, feed me?
Yeah, I think
it's nice that you want to talk about music stuff, but I'm hungry.
It's time to eat.
Feed me. Excuse me.
Well, I don't know, Jay. What do you think? You think we should about time to wrap it up? We've been going solid 2 hours.
Yeah, I can't believe 2 hours has passed.
I know.
Exodus, if you want, just get at me on the forum, and I'll try to like figure out exactly.
At this point, I want all of you to mix my stuff. Let the TascFam do their thing. There's no substitute for experience. Gotcha needs some sort of thing. TascFam you mentioned or similar. I have a low level panic attack when I try to write, record, and mix everything myself. Yeah, it's a lot. It's overwhelming, man. You got to break it down into bite-sized, manageable pieces, I would say. There's a lot of stuff, especially when you're doing all that stuff yourself, you know. A lot of hats to wear.
Well, I mean, if you're already working on some mixes for him, then you know should be in good
Yeah,
hands.
yeah, man. I'm excited to send you the mix, John. It's almost
Yeah.
done. I would have sent it tonight. I just didn't have time to bounce it out. So
Yeah, I mean, but certainly you can reach out to, you know, to the board or to me
Yeah.
on the board
Yeah, hit us
or
up on the
whatever,
board,
and,
yeah.
and you know, try to do some kind of remote guidance thing.
yeah, ride the fader. Nice. Yeah, I mean depends how the vocals are recorded for sure.
Yeah, I'm still like reading through the Exodus thing here.
Ditch the software 10 years ago, like Matt.
Yeah, Exodus, hit me up on the board and I'll try to like clarify these things. I'm not.
Yeah, this seems like a board discussion. I think. You guys are...
I mean, setting up the Mackie for inline should be, you know, setting up a Mackie as an inline console. Sorry, I'm losing my train of thought here trying to read.
Here, I'll throw your email on there.
Yeah. Should be pretty straightforward, but how to route it, even with a mixer that's not designed to run split, I could draw you a picture and we can make it pretty easy, I think. And it'll work pretty much universally.
Cool. Well,
John,
yeah, through DA's email there, so hit him up on email, bro.
Yeah, I mean, you know, the way that I mix and the way that Mike mixes are probably like, you know, two very, very different things.
Yeah,
so,
everybody's got a different vibe, so.
I mean, if you want to feed him some stuff and you want me to take a spin at a couple things, that's cool too. You know, we'll definitely talk about it. And,
yeah.
We can talk about task family rates and all those kind of things. And, you know, you guys are good sports through my rambling and stuff, so, you know.
Yeah, Jeremy's been working on some stuff.
Oh, yeah?
That's Exodus, yeah. Been sending me a couple of stuff. A couple things.
I like sending me a couple stuffs better.
Yeah, sending me a couple. I'm like fading hard, guys.
Yeah, the coffee's wearing off now.
Thank you guys so much for coming out tonight. I'm sure all you guys are members of the forum. If not, 424recording.com/forum. There's usually an after party there after the stream, so if you want to go hang out.
You know, we didn't really talk that much about tonight.
Don't forget to check out the video I made about this pedal. We're going to be doing a video every week up until we do the Kickstarter. We're still just working out some stuff on that. Still actually waiting for Kickstarter to approve it. So, but I think we're gonna hold off and get some things straightened out with the pedal. So make sure you check out the video on that. Let us know what you think. Yeah, hit us up at our emails. I'm 424recording@gmail.com, of course, and
operationaudio@gmail.com.
if you want more,
Still got chats.
if you need more.
How much is it?
What did we figure out? Don't we have a price?
Well, I do declare the street price on said device in its finished package form should be in the ballpark of $200. Yeah.
Yeah, Matt knows.
The you know, if you guys have any sort of further technical questions about that,
we should make a board or something.
Well, it'll come with literature when you buy it, but
Yeah,
if you have questions about some of that stuff, you know, I can fill you in more sort of off the live chat.
Hit the like button if you smash that like button if you like this, and don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel, you nerd, which I'm sure all you guys are, but you know.
Subscribe to his YouTube channel, you nerd. Smash the like button on this video.
I need to buy the extended Skype shit.
And you know,
hit me up.
Don't be afraid to light up the you know, the forum and ask questions. We always say that, but
yeah, if you want the extended service, hit me up on the Patreon 424recording. Patreon.com/424recording. Yeah, let's do it.
Skizz sent you a gift.
Oh, nice, dude! I can't wait. Can't even hook up a mixer. Yeah, you're gonna need the extended warranty package.
Exodus, give me a gear list. Go, you know, hit me up in my wizard board or whatever, and I'll draw you some pictures. sort of just like, you know, on the down low.
Keep it on the down low. Oh yeah, speaking of keeping on the down low.
Yeah.
Yeah, Capro's getting hungry. We're getting tired. And this has been a production of 424 Recording and Operation Audio.
My nicotine level is low.
Yeah. So, guys, thank you so much for coming out. We'll see you. I'll be around tomorrow. I think I'm going to be coming on earlier tomorrow. Not sure when. Valentine's Day, so the ladies are not going to be happy with us if we're streaming. So, we'll be back Wednesday, Jay and I together, and for an actual Wizard Wednesday, unless the East Coast is flooded.
Come to Mississippi, Little Jam.
Hell yeah.
I'm down.
424 tour.
Oh shit! Like a shit book signing. Like, here we are. Here we are at Comfort Inn in Hattiesburg.
Yeah, we'll be chilling at the bar with the toilets.
Yo, catch me out La Quinta, big pimpin'. Spending hundreds.
Spending hundos.
All right, peace out, you nerds.
Peace out, fam.
Good stream, good talking. See you all
good
Wednesday.
To see you guys. See you next Wednesday.
Like and subscribe.
Like and subscribe. Peace.